Before we dive into this insane true story, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Because what you're about to hear isn't just crime, it's chaos, greed, and betrayal at its finest. This is the Great Train Robbery. The night was unnaturally still, August 8, 1963, and the countryside of Buckinghamshire slept beneath a heavy silence. But at precisely 3 a.m., that silence shattered. A Royal Mail train, traveling from Glasgow to London, suddenly jolted to a stop near a bridge in Ledburn. The red signal light ahead glowed like an omen in the dark, warning of danger. The driver, Jack Mills, leaned forward, frowning. There were no scheduled stops here. He had no idea that just beyond that signal, a gang of 15 men was waiting, ready to pull off one of the boldest robberies in British history. When Mills stepped out to investigate, a figure emerged from the darkness. Then, a flash of metal, a sickening thud. The driver fell to the ground, dazed and bleeding. The men moved quickly, voices low and urgent, their movements rehearsed. One of them, later known as Bruce Reynolds, the mastermind, signaled the others. The crew swarmed the train like ghosts in the night, cutting the power lines, disconnecting carriages, and locking the postal workers in the rear. They knew exactly what they were after: the second carriage, packed with millions in cash. For a few heart-pounding minutes, the countryside echoed with muffled shouts, clanging doors, and the scrape of metal crates being forced open. Inside were canvas bags stuffed with money, crisp, newly printed notes bound for London banks. They loaded the loot into a waiting truck with military precision. No guns, no shots. Just speed, skill, and silence. When they were done, over £2.6 million had vanished into the night. It would be worth more than £60 million today. By sunrise, the headlines screamed across the country, "The Great Train Robbery." Police swarmed the tracks, journalists rushed to the scene, and panic rippled through the nation. Who could have pulled off something so daring, so clean, so perfectly timed? Detective Tommy Butler, a veteran of Scotland Yard's flying squad, was called in. Known for his cold eyes and relentless drive, Butler wasn't impressed by the spectacle. He was furious. "No one embarrasses the Yard," he said flatly. And just like that, the hunt began. Meanwhile, the robbers hid out at a rented farmhouse called Leatherslade Farm, a remote property tucked away behind overgrown hedges. For the first few days, they celebrated like kings. They split the cash into piles, laughed over newspapers calling them criminal geniuses, and listened to the radio as the nation speculated wildly about who they were. But beneath the jokes, tension grew. Too many people involved, too many loose ends. Reynolds, the smooth-talking leader, tried to keep control. "Lay low," he told his men. "No phones. No bragging. We wait till it's safe." But paranoia spread fast. Every sound outside felt like footsteps. Every knock on the door made their hearts jump. The police, meanwhile, had found a lead, a red signal light that had been tampered with using a battery and a bulb. It was crude but clever. Someone had forced the train to stop. Then came a fingerprint, smudged on a bottle at the scene. Not enough to identify anyone, but enough to prove they were getting closer. Days turned into weeks, and the heat closed in. The robbers decided to abandon the farm before the police found it. They split up, some heading to London, others hiding in small towns or trying to flee abroad. But in their rush to leave, they made one fatal mistake. They left behind evidence. Inside Leatherslade Farm, detectives found torn packaging, fingerprints on food cans, and a stack of newspapers dated just days after the robbery. Proof the gang had been hiding there after the heist. Butler knew then, they were close. He ordered roadblocks, raids, and round-the-clock surveillance. One by one, the gang began to fall. A man bragged to a friend. Another left a car parked too long near a safe house. Soon, names surfaced: Bruce Reynolds, Buster Edwards, Ronnie Biggs. Ordinary men with ordinary faces, suddenly wanted across the country. But not all of them were found. Some slipped away into the underworld. Some changed their names. And one, the quiet one, the man who never spoke during the heist, was gone without a trace. Weeks later, Butler received a tip. A stolen car matching the robbers' getaway vehicle had been found, abandoned in a muddy field, and inside was a single clue that didn't belong. A fingerprint on the dashboard. A match. He stared at the report in silence, the weight of the moment settling in. The man behind the wheel wasn't Reynolds, or Biggs, or any of the usual suspects. It was someone unexpected, someone who shouldn't have even been there. When Butler looked up at his team, his voice was low, steady. "Find him," he said. "He's the key to everything." But what the detectives didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that the man they were now hunting wasn't just part of the robbery. He was the one who made it possible. The insider. The one who knew the train schedule, the cash route, and the security protocol. And he was still out there. The story that began with one of the most daring robberies in British history was about to twist into something darker, a tale of betrayal, hidden alliances, and revenge. Because someone inside the system wanted that train to stop. The countryside had grown quiet again, but the calm was deceptive. Behind the scenes, Scotland Yard was in chaos. Maps covered the walls, red strings linked names, locations, and dates. Detective Tommy Butler stood in the center of the room, staring at the evidence board. His cigarette burned down between his fingers as he muttered, "This wasn't just a heist. Someone fed them the route." The realization hit like thunder. The robbers hadn't just been lucky, they had inside help. The Royal Mail route was top secret, and the exact train schedule wasn't known to the public. Someone had sold them the information. Someone inside the system. Meanwhile, across the English countryside, Bruce Reynolds sat in a cold, dimly lit room in London, pacing like a caged animal. The crew was restless. They'd split the money, but it was dirty cash, serial numbers traceable, the bills hard to move. Tension grew with every passing day. Buster Edwards, the getaway driver, slammed his fist against the table. "We can't just sit here, Bruce. Butler's breathing down our necks. We need to disappear." Reynolds shot him a hard look. "We vanish now, we draw attention. We keep calm, we move smart. Butler's clever, but he's not magic." But Butler was clever. Within days, his team began rounding up suspects. They raided pubs, questioned family members, tailed known criminals through back alleys of London. Every whisper, every rumor led to another dead end, until a woman named Barbara, girlfriend of one of the robbers, cracked under pressure. Through tears, she revealed the name of the farmhouse, Leatherslade Farm. When officers arrived, what they found was gold for investigators. Torn-up bills, dirty gloves, fingerprints, leftover food, every piece screamed of a rushed departure. Butler smiled grimly. "They were here," he said, "and they left in a hurry." Still, one thing didn't fit. On one of the bottles, a fingerprint didn't match any of the known robbers. It belonged to someone else, someone clean, with no record. Butler's instincts screamed. "That's our inside man," he murmured. While police pieced together clues, the robbers' alliance began to crack. One of them, Tommy Wisby, panicked and tried to flee to France under a false name. Another, Jimmy White, was spotted in a London nightclub spending new bills that matched the stolen notes. The arrests started rolling in. Each man caught meant another secret spilled. But Bruce Reynolds stayed one step ahead. He moved through London's underworld like smoke, always vanishing before police arrived. He dyed his hair, changed his clothes, and even used fake IDs. For months, he was a ghost. But his pride was his weakness. He couldn't stop reading the newspapers, couldn't stop listening to the radio talk about his heist. "They'll write books about us," he told Buster over a drink one night. "We pulled off the impossible." But Buster didn't share his thrill. He stared into his glass, quiet. "You think this is over?" he said softly. "Butler won't stop. And that man you trusted, the one who gave you the train schedule, he's the reason we're all done for." Reynolds froze. What did you just say? Buster hesitated, but then it spilled out. The insider. The post office man. He's already talking. He made a deal. The glass shattered in Reynolds' hand. Betrayal hit like a gut punch. The man who had helped plan the timing, the signal manipulation, the escape route, had flipped. The gang's secret wasn't secret anymore. At Scotland Yard, Butler's office buzzed with energy. They had the name, Patrick McKenna, a mid-level postal worker with access to train schedules and cash manifests. McKenna had confessed that he'd leaked information to Reynolds in exchange for a share of the loot. But now, fearing for his life, he'd turned informant. Butler wasn't satisfied. He's not the brain, he said. He's a pawn. Someone else inside the post office gave the final details. And I'll find him. Meanwhile, word of McKenna's betrayal spread like wildfire. The remaining robbers panicked. Some wanted him silenced. Others wanted to flee. The brotherhood that once seemed untouchable began to unravel into suspicion and rage. A week later, Scotland Yard received an anonymous call. The voice was calm, measured. If you want the rest of the money, check the old airfield near Aylesbury. Then the line went dead. When police arrived at the location, they found something chilling, a half-buried duffel bag filled with rotting banknotes and a blood-stained rag. It wasn't just evidence. It was a message. The robbers were turning on each other. As Butler studied the scene, he realized what was happening. They're cleaning house, he said. They think one of their own is leaking information. They're scared and dangerous. Back in London, Reynolds was running out of options. His network was collapsing, safe houses were being raided, and every man left was a liability. But then came a knock on the door of his hideout. It was a messenger with a note, no name, just an address in Bristol and 3 words, "He's still talking." Reynolds stared at it for a long time, then looked up with cold fury in his eyes. "Then it ends tonight," he said. That night, the rain came down hard, masking the sound of footsteps in the dark. Somewhere in Bristol, the man who had sold out the gang sat in a rented flat, nervously watching the window. Every creak of the floorboards made his heart race. He had no idea that his past was about to catch up with him. Outside, Reynolds lit a cigarette, the glow illuminating his face for just a second. "You took our secret," he whispered. "Now I'm taking it back." But before anything could happen, blue lights erupted in the night. Police cars swarmed the street, sirens blaring. Butler had gotten there first. Reynolds froze. The manhunt that had gripped Britain for months was over. Or so everyone thought. Because just before the officers kicked down the door, someone else vanished into the darkness, someone with the last untouched portion of the stolen money. And that person was never caught. The headlines screamed across Britain, "Train robbers caught." But in the smoke and noise of that night's arrests, the real story was far from over. Bruce Reynolds sat in an interrogation room at Scotland Yard, his once slick hair now tangled and damp from the rain. Across from him sat Detective Tommy Butler, expressionless, eyes cold as winter steel. Between them, a single tape recorder, humming quietly. "You pulled off the biggest robbery in British history," Butler said slowly. "And yet, you left evidence everywhere. Was it greed or stupidity?" Reynolds smirked, blood still dried on his lip. "Call it ambition," he muttered. Butler leaned forward. "Call it what you want. But I know there's someone else. Someone who wasn't in the farmhouse. Someone who took their cut and disappeared." For the first time, Reynolds' smile faltered. Across the country, newspapers celebrated the arrests. 13 men were charged. The nation's confidence in law enforcement was restored, or so it seemed. But in the shadows of London's underground, whispers began to spread. A mysterious figure, known only as the planner, had been the one who orchestrated the heist from the inside. A man who knew the postal system, the train timings, and every escape route, yet whose name was never written down, whose face was never seen. At the trial, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, families, and curious onlookers flooded the stands as the accused were led in. The evidence was overwhelming: fingerprints, witness statements, and even confessions. Butler stood outside the court doors, calm but unsatisfied. "We caught the gang," he said to the press, "but not the ghost who guided them." Inside, Reynolds watched his crew sentenced to decades behind bars. 30 years. 25 years. 20 years. When it was his turn, he straightened his jacket, looked at the judge, and said simply, "You can lock me up, but you'll never find all the money." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge slammed his gavel. "Then I hope you enjoy spending your best years thinking about it." As the men were escorted away, one of them, Buster Edwards, glanced back at the gallery. There, among the crowd, stood a man in a gray overcoat, wearing a hat pulled low. He was watching, smiling faintly. Then he turned and walked out. Months later, strange things began to happen. A postal clerk in Birmingham suddenly left the country. A security guard at a London depot disappeared without warning. And scattered across Britain, a few of the stolen notes began to surface, not in piles, but in singles, trickling through the economy like ghosts of the crime that once shook the nation. Detective Butler, now nearing retirement, received one of those notes sealed in an anonymous envelope. No message. Just a £20 note, traceable to the robbery, and a faint scent of pipe smoke clinging to the paper. Butler stared at it for a long time, then said to his deputy, "He's still out there. The one who got away." Meanwhile, somewhere in Spain, Bruce Reynolds walked along a quiet beach, free at last after years on the run. He'd escaped custody after being released on parole, vanishing once again into Europe. The sun set behind him as he lit a cigarette and smirked. "The perfect crime," he whispered. But deep down, he knew it wasn't perfect, because someone had played him too. Back in London, Butler's health was fading. He spent his last years obsessed with the case, reviewing files, maps, and statements even when no one else cared anymore. Then one cold morning, a young detective sorting through the old evidence room found something strange, a report that had been misfiled. It was a list of Royal Mail employees with high-level access in 1963. One name had been circled in red ink: Arthur Baines, route manager. Baines had vanished 2 days after the robbery. His bank account had received a large, untraceable deposit. And his body was never found. The revelation hit the department like lightning. The man who fed information to the robbers wasn't Patrick McKenna, the low-level worker who confessed. It was Baines, his superior, the true insider, the one who orchestrated it all. The planner. In a twist of cruel irony, Baines had vanished with his share before the gang even realized he'd betrayed them. He was the reason for the red signal, the reason the plan ran like clockwork. The robbery wasn't just a criminal masterpiece, it was a double-cross. When the news reached Reynolds years later, he laughed bitterly. "We thought we were the masterminds," he said to an old friend. "But we were just his pawns." The Great Train Robbery had made history, not just for the fortune stolen, but for the mystery that refused to die. Millions recovered. Millions still missing. Men punished. One man gone forever. In 1970, another envelope appeared at Scotland Yard. Inside was a black and white photograph, an older man in a tropical suit, standing beside a cafe in Brazil, holding a newspaper with the headline "Train Robbery Mastermind Still Missing." Written on the back in fading ink were 3 words: "Thanks for the ride." No one ever found Arthur Baines. Some say he died in South America. Others claim he changed his name and lived quietly, blending into the world he once outsmarted. The money, they say, was never fully recovered. Detective Butler's files remain archived, yellowed pages filled with notes, sketches, and one handwritten phrase underlined twice. The perfect crime never ends. It just fades into legend. And that's exactly what the Great Train Robbery became. Not just a story of greed and glory, but of betrayal, brilliance, and the ghosts of justice that never sleep. So the next time you board a train or pass a quiet countryside at night, remember, somewhere out there, one man rode away into history with a fortune that Britain never found. If you thought this story was wild, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because the next crime might just be closer to home.